So I'm gonna put my gloves on. The nice thing about this is really realizing how you can shift the color without making too much paint. I'm sure if you've painted, you have noticed that when you're trying to get another color, like let's say a lavender color, and it's kind of very reddish and you want to make it blue, and then you add in some ultramarine blue, pretty much the entire thing will then be dark blue because it's just a slight shift. And from teaching landscapes and still life, I figured out a way to help people not ruin tons of paint. And it's slightly shifting the color using mix downs. And this is kind of what this is all about here. And you see that I'm putting long lines of white and black. You can use that to cut. It's like butter, if you will. You, instead of scooping the butter out and then you've got all sorts of other paint and color in there, you're keeping it cleaner that way. All right, I'm just going to put out some other paint. I'm going to put out some other paint. So yellow ochre's here. I'm going to put some yellow ochre there. I'm actually just going to put, see, every time I do it a little bit differently. Just going to put it here. And we're not going to be stingy with our paint, okay? I'm going to put some yellow ochre here. Here. I'm going to need a little bit more. Every time we do something, that's why it's important to paint as much as you can. The more you paint, the faster you'll get. Your learning curve will increase. All right. And I'm going to just put some yellow ochre here. And put that here. See if that messes that up. I'll put some over here. All right, lots of yellow ochre everywhere. All right, so what are we going to need next? Some Cad Red Light. So this one here is 1:1, so I'm going to try and match it exactly the same amount. Do that. Cad Red Light is super powerful, so that'll be very interesting. So this one I'm going to put even more in there. Sometimes you'll see that there's a bit of liquid coming out. There's a little bit excess oil. Every paint is like that. If it's been sitting around a while, if it's gone from warm to cold, I have my paint sometimes out in the garage, so it might be a bit oily. You just have to just wipe it off. So this is 2:1, 2:1. The other way you could do this, if you want to make one giant pile right up here at the top of more Cad Red to yellow ochre, and same here, you can then just make a giant pile and then slowly, put that pile down there, whichever way you like. So here, in the mother piles, I probably should have waited to do this, but what I wanted to show you is a lot of yellow ochre here, red, and this one's just the opposite. You start with red and then you go to yellow ochre. So we'll see what happens with that. That's our mother pile. That's kind of what we were going to get to, what we evolved to once we really understand how to mix. So you see, sometimes if the paint is really leaky, it makes it very, very messy. And this is really hard. Cad Red is painfully difficult to get out of clothes, and it just gets everywhere. Same with Viridian and so many other colors. But you just have to have your wet wipes. They work wonderful. And lots of OxyClean. Okay, So where are we going here? Oops, I had some red here. Oh, it's supposed to be one-on-one. What am I doing? So like I said, you can either do it this way, or you can make a big pile here and then just separate it out, whichever one. So I'm just trying, like I said, every time I paint, I do something a little bit different. So, all right. First thing I'm going to do is we need to have our light, medium, and dark grays. So these are the grays. And we're going to use our palette knife, and we're going to go cut it down and move it to the side. So I'm going to, and we use a lot of this, so I'm not going to be stingy. All right, that's a lot. Take some more. And I'm doing it this way just because some people go like this, and then when they get it off, it's like, I don't know, it's just harder to get off. I like it. Oh, geez. Yeah, accidents do happen. All right, let's get some more. See, I've already used up all that white. Getting the big white is definitely recommended. White never goes bad. We can always use it. Okay, so we've got our nice paints here. So next thing we're going to do, I'm going to clean off my palette knife. And that's really important. When you go from one mixture to another, wipe off your palette knife. We go through a lot of paper towels. So now this is the tricky bit. Which light gray is light enough? So when you come in, if you want to mix a lot, or have your mixtures already done, you can do that. But it is a bit tricky. We can always adjust them once we get in before we start painting. So this is light. But when I'm looking at that, what I notice is it's very similar to the here, right? So I think this is more like a medium color. And I'm actually going to compare it to my previous ones. Yes, that's much darker than what I had in my previous palette. It's very similar to what I had as a medium color. So if that's too dark, I'm going to take some more white and put some in there. So when you're first starting, which color did I use? I think I used Holbein. So maybe Holbein's a little bit more powerful, who knows. All right, so here's our second color. So this, and this is a great reason to use this palette. If you want to use a plain glass, make sure you have a nice neutral gray color, similar to this. A neutral gray color is basically if you have liquid basics. It's the only time I actually use basics. A neutral gray, and it's, I guess that's all it is, just neutral gray. Oops, it's neutral gray. So if you're going to have a plain glass palette, paint this on a piece of paper, poster board, or an old canvas or something that you're going to put the palette on. So this is what's underneath. And that's the same thing that we're going to put on our canvas, or preferably our panel. Okay, so if this is too similar to this, all we do is just grab some more black. All right, see, I'm doing this before class. It's always good to have this ready to go. So I'm actually going to take this and put it in my palette seal and stick it in the freezer so it's ready to go for my next workshop. Then I can run around and help people. All right, so this one, obviously, it's going to be darker, and we are going to make it darker than the next one. I know it sounds really easy to mix paint and say, okay, this pile has to be a little bit darker, but sometimes it's difficult. And when you go to a workshop, there's so much you're trying to learn. See, I thought that would be enough, and it's not enough. Because I really do want to have a difference, because the more of a difference we have in our light, medium, and dark gray, the more we'll see it in our mixtures. Okay, I think I'm even going to go a touch darker. I'm going to compare it to what I had before. Yeah, just a touch. And there's some really cool videos you guys can watch. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Watch it on YouTube, people painting with the Zorn palette. Okay, so this color is lighter than this paper. This color is pretty much the same, and this one's a little bit darker. Okay, look how we've already used up all that white. Gotta get some new white. Okay, I'm gonna put some here. Oop, some here. Pretty much I always have a paper towel in my left hand. It's almost like I can't even paint without a paper towel in my left hand. Okay, so we've got our colors. So if you squint your eyes, you'll see definitely these reds are darker than the yellows, and you should be able to see that this gray or black and gray are darker than over here. All right. So we're going to be using these colors. So now you can open your eyes, and I'm sure you can see that these grays are cooler than these colors. These are warm colors. Imagine sun, imagine heat, fire, okay? Warm, and these are our cools. So when I say cool it down, that's what makes the Zorn palette so wonderful. There's a gray, a black, and a white. So if I say, we need to cool it down when there's only 3 colors, you know it's going to have to be using the black because there's no other choice. When you have a palette full of many blues and greens and all sorts of things, there's many different choices, and that's where we can kind of get stuck, and then we start adding some crazy colors and get really non-attractive flesh tones. So warm colors, yellow ochre and cad red. Cool is the black or the grays or white. Okay, so this is my yellow ochre and my white mixed together. So I don't want it to get too pasty white. So what I was saying before is, instead of putting all these yellow ochres here, you could have just, actually I think we'll just do that. Let's just pile this in here. You know, you can always change your mind. That's the great thing. So we have a nice color there. Okay, so that's yellow ochre and white. See, that's yellow ochre and light. And we are going to need a lot of paint because the bigger pile of paint you have, it will stay wet longer. You can use it the next day. And plus, I want you to get used to mixing a good amount. Okay, so this is a really big pile. So what I'm going to do, because it's really mixed, you don't see any big bunches of white. So yellow ochre and light. That means yellow ochre and light gray. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Okay, now this is important to make enough grays. I probably didn't make enough, so I'm going to have to do that. Actually, maybe I'll just put this up here. Use a little bit less. Wiping this off. Let's take some of this gray. It's about that much. I'm not sure how much that is. We're trying to see what happens. So now it's become muted, or what you can also call it toned down. All right, sometimes when we can't find the right color, using a complementary color helps, okay? So we're using a gray to do that. So you see how this is really intense yellow, and this is a toned down version of it. Something we see a lot. Okay, so this is our second pile. So depending on how much you had, you can take some of this, or you can, if you made a giant pile of that, you can just move it down. And then we're going to take some of this. And the goal with the second color is just to make it a little bit darker than the one above it. All right, you see that? Definitely, this looks more yellow than that, right? So for the last one, we can, again, either take it from here or start at the beginning, take some of this guy, put it here, add some of the gray. So this is pretty dark. I kind of like it actually, but I might add a little bit more of my yellow ochre and white mix. Just to lighten it up a bit. So you have a clear difference between yellow ochre and white, yellow ochre with the light gray, yellow ochre with the medium gray, and yellow ochre with the dark gray. If you want to darken a little bit more, you can. There's no rhyme or rule exactly. It's kind of just to get a little bit different. Okay, so this is the yellow ochre and black, and I left this here because these dark colors are going to be really good, especially in the hair or even for mixing. So I really want them to go much darker. Okay. And if I'm looking up here, you see all these darks? You know, the hair, a lot of people think, oh, her hair is blonde, I'm going to use yellow ochre. But if you squint your eyes, you see this is very light, but that doesn't mean that there's not darks in there. There's other colors in there. And if you squint your eyes, you'll see right around here and there, down here, there's a lot of darker golds. Up here, this looks really, really dark. It's the light. You know, when she goes out in full light, everything looks really light. But you need to have a nice base of colors, a nice base. You need to have a nice dark base or medium base so that the lights pop. Okay, so you see that we're starting to get some colors in there, even though this is green. But if you only have 3 colors, you got to make it work with 3 colors. All right, so let's mix these two. So a lot of flesh tones, what we are finding are pretty much the cad yellow. What we're finding is when we were doing our mixtures is that when you mix yellow ochre and cad red light, those are pretty much the flesh tones. So this is pretty heavy yellow ochre. So I think well, actually I'll just use this here. I'll put this in here. It's kind of convenient actually. I think I'm going to use this one too. Just make a nice big pile. See, like I told you, the cad red is very intense. So I'm scooping up all these guys, putting them in there. I'm going to scoop this one up too, so I don't waste time pouring it out. Okay, so what I'm going to do before, I'll put the white in there. So I'm mixing this all together. And from my previous experience, I think this is looking pretty orange, heavy red. So what I'm going to do is already mix this one here. So I'm not going to mix the two in isolation. I'm not going to go all the way down here and then go to this one. I'm going to do them kind of around the same time because I want them to be different. I want one to be heavy yellow and the other one to be heavy red. This is, again, learning curve. Okay, so this definitely is more red, for sure. Okay. Clean this up a little bit. So you see that this is definitely more of an orange and this has gone more red. Okay, how am I gonna? I think I'm gonna add some more yellow ochre over here. Let's see what happens. Just want to make it a little bit more yellow, because there's no point of us making two whole lines of color when they're too similar. Okay, there it moves. Okay. Haven't put no, I still want more yellow. So fortunately the Sharpie underneath is not mixing in there. So note to self, don't put so much cad red out. Okay, so now we see definitely very orange, much more red. I'm actually going to take all this, because these are going to be our main colors we're using. Okay. All right. I think that's pretty decent. Could be a little bit lighter. Well, let's see. All right, so we've got this color. We've got like a nice big fat amount of color. So I'm not going to use it all. Just going to use that top portion. Now I'm going to add some white. Wiping off our color before we mix it in with white. That's a nice light color there. All right. So that's heavy yellow. Okay, so we have our color here. I think I want a little bit more. So this is the yellow ochre and red. This is going to, and white, and this, so this is yellow ochre and red, and a little bit more yellow. And this one is without the white. And now we're gonna add some gray to it, with the goal of trying to make it look different than the first one. So we're cooling it down, toning it down. And I think that, you see how it's not so intense as the first one. Okay, so we still have all this color. Take all these colors out of there. Yeah, I think goal is don't put the cad red and yellow all over the place. All right, so I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna put it down here for the darks. So I'm gonna add some medium to this. So that's the medium color, almost the same color as the palette paper. It's darkening it up a bit, cooling it. And then going to the dark. Oops. That's a nice color. Okay, so before we move on, I'm actually going to, I really like that. I think it looks pretty good. They're all slightly different. I'm going to clean it up a little bit. All right. So basically just make one more yellow or orangey and the other one more red. That's way easier to think about that. Okay, so this is the pure version. I'm going to take some out. I'm going to put it in here. And so I don't get confused, these are pure Cad Red colors. I'm just going to take these all off. So, clean palette knife. Here's our mixture that's heavy red. Let's add some white to it. White cools things down, as does a cool color. See how it's cooled? I don't know if you understand what cooling is, but it's not as warm as it was before. Maybe you can see that. It takes a while to see colors. And before we start doing art, we only see like, I don't know, what is it, 10 colors or something like that? Okay, so I'm going to move that down. I'm going to take the light again, light gray, with the goal of toning it down, cooling it down, maybe even darkening it a bit. All these words, lots of things to remember. And as I'm doing this, I'm looking over here seeing, okay, these are definitely more yellow and these are more red. So if this would have come out exactly the same, I would have needed to add more red to this. Okay, so take this, put it down here. So now I'm using my medium. So you see how much of this light, medium, and dark that we're using. So you don't have to keep remixing. It's best to make a big pile of that. Okay, there we go. Look at that, that's a pretty color. See how it's changing and it's different than this. So this is my dark. I'm gonna scoop up my dark. So all of these mixtures here in these columns, they all have red, yellow, white, and these down here all have a bit of black in them. The farther we go down, the darker the color. So really intense colors just mixed with white, light gray, medium gray, and dark gray. Get great colors. All right, and it's a nice transition. It's not abrupt, okay? If I were to mix this red into this, it would turn the whole thing over. Or if I decide, oh, I want to make this a bit darker, if I were to use black straight into that, it would turn the entire pile black. And I think that's a huge mistake we all make. Just like, you know, let's hurry up and mix the color. So that's why it's nice to do it with these grays. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this, because this is our black version. We want to have a nice dark color, see what pure black does. So what we want to do is make a nice, rich dark. It's kind of looking like pudding right now. Not quite chocolate pudding, but I guess I'm hungry for lunch. So anything's looking like pudding right now. But look at that really nice, rich dark there. It makes a gorgeous burgundy color. So you're not going to be able to find the exact color right here that fits onto our portrait, but they're very close. And that's what we're trying to do, is get very close and then make our micro mixtures after that. So this is pretty dark, and I'm just looking at some flesh tones around here. So you don't see exactly this, but it's nice, deep, rich, and warm. And that's where we can mix it and get other things. All right. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to do was got the hair darks over here, so that's black and yellow ochre. very similar to this. We're just going to make it a little bit darker, and because you really do need to have those darks. As we learned here, the best way to do it is start with the lighter color and then add in your darker color. Because if you start with black and try to lighten black, it's going to take a whole lot of that other color. So these are the darks of the hair. I think I'm actually going to put a little bit of red in there too, because you know, hair isn't dead. It's got highlights, lowlights, warm lights, cool lights. And I'm just trying to basically make 3 different kind of darks. Okay, so these are the greenish tones, and these are the more red tones in it. None of this has any white in it. It's all the 3 main colors. So the goal is to try to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different colors using just the 3 main colors, no white, no gray. And then we're going to definitely clean our palette nice because we're going to go for the mother pile. The Zorn palette is really great. 3 colors, it makes it very simple. And then using the grays, adding it in, making these really nice flesh tones, which are going to be basis for what we're going to be mixing later. We've also got these great darks that we can make just with those 3 colors. So we can do a whole portrait in all these 3 colors. But so you don't pre-mix all of these colors first on a daily basis if you're going to paint. What I like to do is mother piles. So in my landscapes, I use mother piles. I make grays with my 3 colors, which that'll be a different video. But for our flesh tones with the Zorn palette, we're using 3 colors. And I want to just show you, it's very interesting how this works. So basically, I need some more black here. I'm going to make sure I use the same color here. Just going to pull that out there. So whenever we grab colors, you know, as we noticed when I was mixing, yellow is less potent than the red. Black is very potent, definitely more so than the other 2. But when we are trying to mix colors, sometimes we just inherently use more of one color than the other. And I like to do this like mother pile thing. I'm just going to actually take the red away. So what I'd like you to do here is take some of your yellow ochre. I'm going to put some yellow ochre up here. I'd like to have some red up here. So I'm going to take some yellow ochre. And the goal is to find a mother pile, a mother color. And I'll show you what we're aiming for. So I like to aim, if this is our photograph, hopefully it's not too shiny. See this nice color right here? This is the color I'm looking at. So when I'm mixing colors, I don't randomly mix them without looking at my portrait or my fruit or whatever I'm painting. So you're going to have to remember to do that too. So right now when I mixed all these colors, I wasn't even looking at the photo because that was just too much information. All right. So I'm going to put this over here. My goal is to try and find that color. All right. So obviously I'm going to move this over. So my goal with the mother piles is to find this color, because that, if we can get that color, all these other colors are related to it in the light area, okay? So yes, we are mixing all of these, but in actual practice, when I'm practicing, I will do a mother pile. So I'm choosing a color that kind of represents the entire face right here. And I'm going to choose the lighter color. I'm choosing yellow. So obviously this yellow is too warm for that cheek. And if I squint my eyes, it's also too dark. So what does that mean? I need to add some white and I need to add some red, right? So let's do that. So here's yellow ochre. First thing I said, let's add some white. Let's do that first. And then I'm going to add some red. I'm not measuring. All right. Oh, that's pretty close. Could be a little bit lighter. I'm going to add a little bit of black, but instead of adding black, I'm actually going to be adding some gray. Okay, I don't know how much gray it needs. I'm just going to add some. So let's put this up to it. Wow. So I'm squinting my eyes and I'm looking at it. And so now I think it needs to be lighter and definitely a little bit more red. Okay, so when I am normally doing this, I have the portrait in a plastic, so we don't ruin our reference photos, okay, because that can be expensive. I usually put them in plastic folders, okay? So I got a little bit lazy, I didn't do it, and I can't wipe that off now. So, but when you do it on a plastic folder, you measure it. Oh, look at that, it's pretty darn close. Then you can wipe it off, okay? So that's why we're gonna remember to do that, unlike what I just did. Okay, so what did we say? I'm going to make it redder and a little bit lighter. So I think the first thing I'm gonna do is lighten it up a bit. So I'm going to take a little bit of white. Here's white, but did you see how I didn't put it right in there? That's because you never know how much it needs. So I added a little bit of white. I'm shifting it slightly, looking at it. It still needs some, oh, I think the value is okay. So now I'm going to add some red into it. So we could either add from the pure red out of the container. So right out of the, we can add the red right out of the thing right here. Or this one right here was cad red. I'm sorry, no it wasn't. This was cad red and mostly cad red and some white. So I'm just going to use a little bit of this. It's already mixed down. Still need a little bit more. Look how nicely that shifts. And that's pretty nice, that's pretty close. I like that. All right, so I just want to show you, if I had decided to use right straight out of the tube color, which this is that enough? I don't know. Let's see what happens. See how it just really makes it pop. It's much heavier. And that was just even a quarter of that major pile that I had. So you have to be very gentle. So when you're shifting your paint, always try to use a mix down as opposed to straight out of the tube. So this one here, this is the red. So I'm just playing around here. And so this is going to be more red. And let's see, it's way too light. I mean, what am I saying? It's way too red. It's way too red. So this is like way too much white. I don't know, maybe it's not. You never know. Wow. So starting with the red, it really makes it a strong color. Do you see that? It's really, really intense. So what did we learn from back here? When we added some gray tones to it, it was just so much better. So I'm going to take my middle gray. Let's see what happens. I'm going to use this whole pile. Look how nicely it tones it down. I'm trying to get the paint on top of my palette knife off. Whew. This is definitely a pinker version of that. Do I see this right here? I think it's, actually I kind of like it. I see it in other places too. So around the eyes it's got definitely more orange. I'm squinting my eyes, I'm looking at the value. The value is pretty nice. It's just a little bit pinker, but it looks perfect for the nose. So this mother pile, great for the pinker areas of the face, like the nose. See that? How that almost, it's maybe even just a little bit darker, but right here, it's pretty spot on, you know? And just remember, we never paint the highlights. I'm not going to ever look to match those colors for my mother piles, because the entire face, I mean, look at this. It's very pink all around here. The eyes have got like a lot more orange and pink around there. The forehead's got pink, not pink, but orange in certain areas, but it's in general more yellow tones. So when we have these mother piles, when we're more advanced painters, when we have our mother piles, I usually have one that's more yellow and one that's more pink. You know, if this is too, you know, if I decided I wanted to yellow that up a little bit, I can, and I wanted to keep the same value, I could probably come into the white mixed with the yellow ochre, and I can just, oops, yikes. So that's what happens when you don't clean off your palette knife. Yep. So I just made it way too red. So I'm gonna go back here, start over again. And that's okay, because having the mother piles is a good thing. So now we see that it's definitely more yellow. It's a little bit, oh, I see. You know where it was? It was right here, that big amount of cad red that mixed in. It's because I didn't clean my palette knife. Word of warning to you all. Okay. See, when we get lazy and we don't realize it, that's where things can go wrong. Trying to mix that in. So let's see what happens now. So white will lighten it, and it will cool it down. Let's see if I can find that color again. It's pretty darn close. I'm not looking for super accuracy, but you know, if we had our plastic thing on, I'd touch it, but I don't want to wreck it right now. So we've got two mother piles simply by mixing the colors, not going down here with all our light, dark, and mediums, but just starting with yellow first, then a touch of red, and then putting our gray in, our medium gray. And then this one was starting with red, and then a lot of some red, and then yellow, and then another gray. And then just trying to see where these two colors would be. This would be a base tone for the orangey parts of the face. This would be for a pinker version. And then from these colors, we can then adjust them with these over here. And that's how we can, you know, get a better, quicker, faster way of getting flesh tones. When I'm painting normally, I will just do the mother piles and slowly make warmer, cooler, lighter, darker versions of it as I am looking at the portrait. And that's what we're going to talk about in class and do that actively. But I wanted you to have the experience of mixing down our paints, of changing the values, shifting the values very gently. And this gentle mixtures and learning how we're doing it really helps to build all that information. It's hand-eye coordination. It's learning how to gently shift something or adjust the color, cool it down, warm it up without turning the entire pile over to a lighter or darker, warmer or cooler color. Okay, so hopefully this was understandable, and you know, go ahead and try it on your own. If you have these materials, put it in the refrigerator. We can look at them when we get to class. If you want to do it in class because you feel more comfortable doing it, that's totally fine. I just like for those who want to already start color mixing at home, go for it. And it's just a little bit easier to understand with a video. So when I say it a second time in the classroom, then it won't be so mysterious, so overwhelming. So if you have any questions and you want to email me before my class, please do so. And otherwise, I'll see you soon. Thank you. Happy painting.